right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of TRP. We are back after an extremely successful company outing of softball, where the three of us got walloped by our opposing team.
You were a traitor.
Matt betrayed his department here to play with his friends.
I was like, not to you guys.
Yeah, no, Matt is not a traitor.
I like to reiterate, it's a team sport, so that doesn't mean individual efforts were some of us were.
Yeah.
I didn't strike out.
several times. That was not me. Ruben, your distinct Puerto Rican heritage did not come into play.
Yeah, it's I've been drinking ever since.
You've been doing that beforehand, though.
Well, I have a built-in excuse. So, thank you for that.
You are very welcome. We have a pretty full show this week. A lot's been going on. You know, the first 40-ish games or so have been under the belt of MLB this season, and there's been a lot of intriguing storylines. Each of our teams have some stuff going on, and then still some trade chatter and stuff going on too, but we'll get into that. I did want to lead off the show, pun intended, with some Yankee notes, because the Yankees are going into this weekend with a series against Tampa where they're only half a game out of first place, much to everyone's surprise with the 3,400 people in the freaking IL. It's been impressive. We're starting to get bodies back, but one of the biggest names to go from returning from the IL to now will be done for the season is last year's Rookie of the Year runner-up, Miguel Andujar. Andujar had a small labrum tear, and he kind of was told either you're going to have surgery and miss the season, or there's a chance you can rehab and come back. He went the rehab route, but hitting a staunch .088 is not going to give you much confidence, and representative for him came out and said that he was trying to play through the pain and just wanted to be there for his team and just couldn't do it. So he has elected surgery, so he is going to be gone the rest of the season. It's very tough when you have one of your top players. I mean, the guy almost hit 300 last year, over 20 home runs. I think he set some kind of record on doubles. I mean, you have an extra base hitting threat. The flip side of that, though, is it gives the Yankees a little bit more clear of a direction with, I think, the surprise, and I'm not just saying this as a Yankees fan, but a surprise of 2019 in Gio Urshela. Gio Urshela, some of you may remember from being sort of a light-hitting defensive wizard for the Cleveland Indians and as basically a lawn ornament for the Toronto Blue Jays. But the Yankees got him last year for cash. And through 94 at-bats, he's got 31 hits. He's hit 2 homers. He's averaging .330. He's 15 RBIs, mostly when the bases have been loaded. He's been getting those clutch hits. .489 slugging percentage, OPS of .874. I mean, do you guys, a guy who has historically had a sub .230 batting average, do you think this is something a player like him can keep up and it's just a new environment and he's excited, or do you think eventually course correction comes into play, Ruben?
This is baseball. It's a game of streaks. A course correction will be coming. There's no greater predictor of the future than past performance. I mean, people get off. I mean, it's like, not to go off topic, but it's like when Michael Conforto starts the season with a .350 average and 10 RBIs in 3 games. He's coming back to earth, and it's
kind of like the Mets, right?
We'll get there.
I just had to throw that in.
Yeah. 86. What?
Yeah. Matt?
To counter that, actually, I mean, if he ends up being a stud player, I mean, I think, obviously from the Cubs, I think of Anthony Rizzo. He hit like 200 or less with San Diego for a couple of years and then went to Chicago, and then he's flourished there. Arrieta was a terrible pitcher in Baltimore, which pretty much everybody's a terrible pitcher in Baltimore, but he went to Chicago and became an ace and now is pitching very well for Philly. It's hard to say with somebody like that because you really just don't know. But a lot of times a change theory can make a huge difference.
From what I've seen, and I'm not trying to look at this through pinstripe lenses, so to speak, allegedly, and I haven't gone and sat and spliced some video of his past swing and his new swing, but working with Marcus Thames has really helped him out. The one of the two Yankee hitting coaches, and apparently he does have like a new stance, and apparently he lets the ball travel in a little bit more, and it's working out for him. Do I think he's going to hit like 330, 335 the rest of the season? No, probably not. I think there will be some course correction. But if he's a contact hitter, which is something the Yankees sorely needed, and I think I belabored that point.
It's something Major League Baseball sorely needs.
I think he's going to be a stellar contact hitter. I think as long as he hits around maybe, he could do maybe somewhere between 265, 280, finish the season up, and have that, Gold Glove caliber, defense at third, which I love Miguel Andujar, and I'm not advocating Andujar not have a spot when he comes back. He absolutely, the guy's a stud. But Andujar's garbage with the glove. I think that anyone who's watched him, I think that's fair to say. He's not good defensively. Keep him on the team. He should be a DH, and he could spell Urshela at third going forward. Should Urshela, stick with the team, which I think he will. But, defense, contact hitting, good speed out there. I think it's legit. I hope it is. I hope I'm not proved wrong, but we'll see. We'll see what happens with that.
So you're feeling very Urshela of him.
I'm feeling Urshela of Urshela. Oh, Gio, that's the way to go. But flipping from the Yankees,
we just lost our audience on that count.
we went from 10 to 5. We halved it.
That's fine.
But speaking of a promising player's removal from the team to one that recently came back to a team, Addison Russell's back with the Cubs. He was great.
Hit a home run.
He did hit a home run. He was also booed by his home fans upon his return. Yeah. The domestic abuse scandal that sent him away in the first place. How do you? Well, I'll start with Matt because it's his team.
Yeah.
Matt, how do you feel about Addison's return? What are you hoping to see, and how do you feel about that whole situation? I know that's a pretty loaded question.
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement with the fans, honestly. I get you kind of pay your dues and you atone for what you did, but that's not going to stop fans from expressing their, disheartened appeal to somebody. I think he was a pretty beloved player for a long time, or for the time that he was obviously, prior to all this happening. He's admitted that he's rolling with it. He understands the response he's getting from the fans, so I'm fully fine with that, honestly. If he can contribute at all, he's a good defensive shortstop. He can hit pretty well for the most part. If he doesn't let it affect him, I think he's going to try to keep his head down and really focus on stuff and not let the kind of outside things really affect him too much. If he can contribute at all, that'll help, give Baez some rest. That'll help give the infield. You have Descalso, who's still pretty young. You have Bodie, who's kind of hit or miss every now and then. So
you really hope he just can beat this reaction and that it's not too much of a black eye on the team.
How long were you waiting to say that one?
I'm not sure that was intentional.
Speaking of intentional or not, that's actually a great segue to our last Cubbies topic of the day. Casual racism, which is, I think, the most fun way anyone's ever said casual racism before. I will I'll let Matt kind of go off on this, but there was the whole hullabaloo the other week with the upside down okay circle but gesture that fan did, and he's been since found and banned from the friendly confines there. So allegedly, just to give some backstory to this, that gesture, that upside down okay, is apparently linked to white supremacy.
Which I didn't know that before this came out.
I did actually know that, but I am familiar with it with the circle game.
Isn't that the in the NBA? Isn't that the dead eye, the 3-point dead eye?
It's not, but showing me.
Well, I've never hit a 3 in my life, so.
No, but there's a circle game where you try and get your family and friends to look at it, and you slug them in the shoulder or whatever if they do.
I've never played with my family, but I get what you're saying.
I have played it with coworkers, not intentionally, but when learning what it was back in retail days. I will give my 2 cents, and I'll turn it over to Matt and then Ruben. But we've talked about race and things on this show before, so we have our certain views on what is specifically trying to be racist or what's going on in the country sometimes. I think he was just doing the circle game, in all honesty. I'd be the first person to throw a towel, so to speak, at the subject or throw a light on it, but I think dude was just doing circle game, Matt.
I think I would agree. I think that's what he's doing. I also think, though, that he should not have done that in that context, only because, one, you have Doug Glanville, who's African-American, and two, the way the country is, the state that social media and just society is in currently, everybody's on edge about that stuff.
Oh, 100%.
If he knew that was and again, I wasn't sure, I didn't know that was a racial gesture or anything like that, but if he knew, or even if there's a hint that he knew that that's what it was, that was a poorly timed thing to do.
Or just don't be a moron on TV.
And don't do shit on TV. I mean, that's really the gist of it.
Rubes?
I've got nothing. You guys summed it up. I mean, don't.
That's all you have to say.
Yeah, don't be a dick.
Yeah.
I think that's it's
easier to get away with it on the radio.
There's 0% chance that you'll get in trouble if you don't be a dick.
Matt just threw it up. Well, Matt and I have done our belaboring talking points.
Speaking of throwing up.
Yeah, speaking of throwing. Oh, God, there's nothing more offensive than the Mets. We wanted to give Ruben some time to kind of talk about where the Mets are at and, just your season so far. Like we said, the first 40 games are in, and, you had high hopes for the Mets before the season started, and kind of where you're at, Ruby.
Well, let's look at the positives first. The NL East is not what it was expected to be at this point.
I would agree.
So no matter what anybody says about the Mets right now, they're still 3.5 out, which is you're right in the thick of things. But it's typical Mets. I mean, well, actually, it's atypical Mets because they started the season with an inability to pitch, which is not the staple of the franchise. But they were hitting the cover off the ball. I think for a month there, they were averaging 6.2 runs a game. They were somewhere in the 4 to 7 range of the highest scoring teams in Major League Baseball. And then, of course, the offense went cold, and guess what happened after that? We had 2018 all over again, where you were getting quality starts and absolutely no run support. They switched the reins. Mickey Callaway's taken over right now, and I want to preface this. I don't think managers should be blamed for poor performances by people. I think that a manager is responsible for developing players, especially if they're younger players, and making sure that they have the time and the attention to continue to move forward in their careers and adjust accordingly. So I don't think a manager should be blamed for that. I think a manager needs to be blamed primarily for decision making. And Mickey Callaway, he is the epitome of baffling New York Mets decisions. Where, you use up 2 pinch hitters in an inning, because he gets out-schemed by the other manager, and then your bench is short at the end of the game, or bringing your closer in with a 5-run lead and then not being able to use him 2 days later because you used him 2 days in a row or whatever, when there's a 1-run lead and you blow the game. Things of that nature, just baffling as a person who has never, ever had any sort of coaching capacity in baseball. So, as a fan, to say, why? And you see this over and over and over. And you and I had discussions about management at some point, and the Yankees got rid of Girardi. They brought in Boone. I was like, wow, that's crazy. Girardi just made it to the ALCS. But this team has taken Boone. The way that they're performing right now with the entire team on the DL.
Oh, I give him all the credit in the world. I'm the first person to say I was wrong because he's managed those personalities and kept them together, and the as easy it is to say, but he's kept that man up philosophy, the next man up, do your job philosophy, and they respond to it.
And I'm not I don't watch the Yankees on a daily basis, but a lot of that has to just do with making the right decisions, having people in the right spots. So again, you can't blame somebody for not executing in a spot, but you can blame somebody for not putting the right person in the spot to execute in the first place. So we're in typical Mets fashion. We're middling at this point in time. We just somehow, some way gave the Nationals their first series victory in a month, which might be a great segue into our next topic.
And it is. And this could be applicable to the Mets too. We might sub out a couple names and you might be able to see the same thing. But good call on the segue. And that is basically, should the Nationals at this point, maybe give it another month or so, but should they consider a rebuild year? Now they're 6 games out, which is not astronomical by any stretch.
Yep.
But with the way that they're playing, with the injuries and things that they've had to endure, I saw an article, and I always like to present if it's somebody else's idea, but this was on NJ.com, NewJersey.com, from Joe Giglio, and he suggested if they continue on this path that they're in with underperforming, to mirror what the Yankees did. What was it, 2016, when they traded the Cubbies, Chapman and Miller to the Indians, and just they restocked the team and they were competitive next year. And Chapman was in his walk year. Miller had two and a half seasons left, and comparatively, Anthony Rendon, great. Well, maybe too great, but a very good third baseman.
He is an asset.
He's an asset. He's in his walk year. And then Max Scherzer, who I would argue with almost anybody is one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball, is at 2.5 seasons left. So do you try and see what you can do when you're this far out, or do you flip those assets and have maybe a short rebuild, like my Yankees did? I'll give my opinion, and then we'll kind of go round robin as we tend to do here. I think it's a good idea. I think that the Nationals are a little bit behind the 8 ball here. I think they still have some very good pieces, some solid young pieces that would, like that outfielder, what is his name, Soto?
Yep, and then Robles as well.
Robles is good. I mean,
just brought up the Kieboom, which is an awesome name, by the way.
Yes, he's very good. So they have a lot of good pieces, and just to add on top of that, I mean, maybe they can re-sign Rendon at the end of the season. Scherzer, you hate to see him go, but I mean, at the same sense, he's getting older too. I don't think he's, thankfully for him, really had any issues. But I mean, you have the pieces there that you can tend, and we've seen it work. So under that, I would suggest that might be a good thing to go for. There's a lot of teams that could use Rendon. There's a lot of teams that would be, foaming at the mouth for Scherzer. I'm sure the Yankees would bend over backwards to try and acquire Scherzer to get a front-end arm like that. And, Rendon fits so nicely on just any contender.
Any team. That guy's a hitter.
So, Rubes, I'll let it go to you.
So, the one thing I would do before, my inclination is, yes, do work on the quick rebuild. That is my inclination. But before I did that, I would sack Davey Martinez. I mean, I would, because it's a team that was perennially contending for first place for 5-6 years in a row, and then Martinez comes in and they think he's the step up. He's the Brett Boone to Dusty Baker's Joe Girardi, and he's not. He's overwhelmed. He's making poor decisions. He's back up.
Aaron Boone.
Oh, what did I say?
Brett. That's Brett.
I'm so sorry. So, anyhow, when Owen Hart continues down the path. So I think I would give my chance under better leadership first. I honestly would. I think I know he's on the hot seat. I would honestly give that over before I made any decision, and I'd try to wait it out, like you said, a month or so. But I would do exactly what I suggested the Mets should have done last year. They have some young assets. They can't sign Syndergaard and DeGrom and so on. And that's over. That's neither here nor there. But I was a strong advocate that let's just build it back up again. Trade the tradable pieces, the Rendons. Trade those guys and get what you can. Scherzer would bring you a haul. And what is he? 33, 34?
34.
34? I mean, how much does he have left at this point? But people would pay a premium.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Absolute premium. Because you're absolutely right. He's as big of a DeGrom or even a Kershaw. He's never healthy anymore. He's the best pitcher in baseball over the last 6 years.
I think that's easy.
He's been consistent. That's the thing.
Oh, but he's been dominant.
Sure.
Consistently dominant.
Well, not this year so much, but yeah.
Gibbs?
So I've been looking, while you guys have been talking, looking at their roster, just to kind of get an idea of where they're at. Their top three, I don't know if, WAR is still a big deal anymore.
WAR's still a big deal.
But their top three players with WAR are all starting pitchers. It's Corbin, Scherzer, and Strasburg. They've always been revolved around a strong pitching staff. I mean, they had, Harper. They had like a good hitting team for the most part, but it's always revolved around their pitching staff. Outside of those three pitchers, the only two players that have a significant WAR is Rendon and Robles.
Yep, Robles.
That's it. The rest of their starting lineup, the rest of their team does not hit very well. There's a team they're hitting 238, which is pretty bad in this league. They don't have a lot of home runs. I mean, they have 55, which is not terrible. But they have a lot of players that are either underperforming, and they have a lot of injuries. Like Soto's been hurt a lot this year. A lot of those young players that they've been hoping to develop have been hurt this year. They still have Ryan Zimmerman for some reason. I don't know why.
The Z-Pack.
But outside of Scherzer, Corbin, and Strasburg, they have Sanchez and Hellickson are their two main starters. They're combined 2-8 with a 5.9 ERA. Like, that's not... You're thinking every 2 out of 5 games, you're kind of rolling the dice a little bit. And even Scherzer's been kind of hit or miss. Corbin's actually been their most consistent pitcher all year.
Well, and in addition to the 40% of not quality starts, consistently, is their bullpen is true.
Outside, Doolittle's been fantastic. Yeah. Outside of Doolittle,
they do little.
They do little. But I would agree. You have two players. I mean, Robles you should definitely keep, but Rendon, it's his last year. If you can get something for him, if you get something for Scherzer, you retool that farm system.
And they're not that far off.
They're not. I mean, they're still 6. I mean, granted, the NL East, again, is not what we thought it was going to be this year, but they're still 6 games out. It's not like they're, dead in the water. They're not the Marlins by any means.
Dead in the water Marlins.
But that's the fear of not being too far out, feeling like you're within striking distance, but you're also,
But they're really not, though.
But they kind of are. You got to read the tea leaves sometimes, man.
Yeah, but they have a lot of young players they're starting to bring up. I think they're trying to identify the fact that, we're probably not going to compete this year. If they can bring up some of those young players so they can trade off a couple pieces. I mean, like you said, Scherzer's going to get a pretty decent haul. If someone needs a decent hitter, Rendon would probably get a decent haul as well. I mean, they can retool pretty quickly and then develop a young core in the last couple months and try to compete next year.
Yeah, and that's what we're saying.
Yeah.
And last little topic for the day is talking about trying to compete. So I was thinking about this. I've heard different reporters mentioning it. I've heard different people on Twitter looking at it. So I just wanted to take my own little gander at it as well and get your guys' thoughts. So as we've mentioned at least 3,000 times on this show, Dallas Keuchel is still available out there.
I'm still kind of amazed by that, honestly.
And the top pitcher for trade that most people were banking on being gone by the deadline is Madison Bumgarner. Now, he's had a rocky start to the season a little bit, but, postseason performances past and what he's been capable of make him an attractive, lefty starter, frontline starter, ace. My question, as I cough because of allergies,
thank you.
Dallas Keuchel, everybody's predicting will sign after June 3rd. Why June 3rd? Why does this make a difference? There's a draft pick compensation tied to Keuchel, who turned down his qualifying offer. So once June 3rd rolls around and there's not an offer tied to him anymore, people are assuming that baseball minds are saying that Keuchel will be immediately grabbed by a Mets or a Yankees or a Red Sox or God knows who. But my question posing, and I'll answer first and then we'll do as we do. Would you rather have Keuchel for just dollars, or would you be willing to trade something for Madison Bumgarner? Keeping in mind where both of them are at, keeping in mind Keuchel hasn't played in a major league game since last year, and Madison Bumgarner is potentially still great, but he's had a bit of a rocky start. Would you give up the pieces for the past performances of Mad Bum, or would you just sign Keuchel for cash? I'll start out by saying I would sign Keuchel for cash. Once that draft pick is no longer associated with him, I would try and sign him for, I think he's 32, 33. I would see if he would take maybe a 2 or 3 year deal or something with an option, because I think Keuchel for a team like the Yankees or like the Red Sox, just to use those two, or even the Mets, I'll throw the Mets in there. He doesn't need to be an ace anymore. He needs to be a 2 or a 3 or the best 4 I think I would see in anybody's rotation. That's all he needs to be, and that's all most of those teams actually need out of him. So if you could get him on a good deal, I would rather give up the cash for Keuchel for what I've seen from him, and I know he isn't as dominant as he was 2 or 3 years ago, but he's still an excellent pitcher. I would not want to mortgage the farm, so to speak, on banking on Mad Bum. And I think Madison Bumgarner is great. I think teams should be lining around the block. Again, the question is just posed not if you would get both of them or what have you, but which would you be more comfortable acquiring. And based on what it would take to give up, I got to go Keuchel. Gabes, what is your thoughts?
I would have to agree. I mean, Bumgarner has the postseason pedigree. He's younger. The problem, though, as you said, if you're looking for... It depends what you're looking for, I guess. If you're looking for somebody to eat up innings, Bumgarner's been hit or miss with the injuries in the last couple of years. He's actually having his worst year ever right now. I don't know if it's because of the injury history, or if he's kind of on the decline a little bit. Keuchel is sort of, he's not as good of a pitcher. If you think like peak Keuchel versus peak Bumgarner, obviously Bumgarner would be the best. At their current state, though, and for what it would be worth to get them, I think it's going to be a lower risk to get Keuchel, and I think you're going to get more or less the same return, or more what you're looking for, than if you try to get Bumgarner.
I think that's fair. Ruby,
It's a simple choice. I mean, nobody wants to give up assets for something that's an unsure product at this point in time, when you could just pay for something which is unsure, but it's not your money. It's not your money, Matt. It's somebody else's money.
Sure.
It's my
Pay the
money.
money.
Let's be honest. It's my money.
It's your money. Wow.
I think it depends. Honestly, it would depend on what the Giants are going to be looking. I mean, they're going to be looking for a lot of stuff in
They're
return.
looking for elite talent.
Because I think of again, I keep coming back to the Cubs, but you think of Cole Hamels, and he was kind of meh with the Rangers, and the Cubs didn't trade very much for him, and he's been lights out since they got him. So, I mean, you could roll the dice and get lucky with him, but, I mean, you already have a decent team. You already have a team that can hit like crazy. You don't need somebody to lock down something. You just out-hit pretty much anybody at this point. So.
No, I think we got Keuchel across the board. 3 Ks for Keuchel. So, yeah, no, that's what makes sense to me. Next week, hopefully, we'll see if there's been any movement on what's been going on. We'll recap our respective teams and their performances, since we're a little bit further in.
Cubs are in first.
Cubs are in first.
Exciting.
Hopefully by next week's show, the Yankees will be in first.
There you go.
The Mets probably will still not be in first.
Actually, I would like to give my take on this. Hopefully by this time next week, we will not be in last.
The Marlins are in your division.
We will not be in last.
You'll at least be in fourth.
May the 4th. Oh wait, we've already passed that. We've long since passed that.
Negative.
So thank everybody for joining Lord Matthew, Rubin, and I this week, and as always, be a fan.